It is a paradox, she thinks as she closes her eyes. The more Maya tries to control, the smaller her world becomes. She has shaped her days through meticulous focus, each choice narrowing uncertainty into defined lines, until sleep comes, and those lines blur again beneath closed lids. Somehow, the moments just before drifting off feel more open, bursting quietly with possibilities she cannot remember upon waking. Tonight, as city lights shimmer softly through her curtains, Maya wonders, what if consciousness isn't the rigid sculptor she believed, but the gentle observer? What if, in surrender, reality expands beyond what she can force into being? In this quiet hour, between effort and letting go, the boundaries of possibility dissolve. It is here, in this liminal twilight, that a truth waits to be found. Maya's greatest power may lie in the choices she does not make, the realities she learns to simply watch. This is her story, a journey that begins not with answers, but with the courage to ask a different kind of question. Maya is 34, her mind always 2 steps ahead, weighing choices on invisible scales. Others see the calm, decisive strategist who turns chaos into clarity by day. Yet inside, she is restless, forever chasing certainty, uneasy with questions left unanswered. Her dark hair falls in a soft wave across her brow. Her gaze, sharp in meetings, now softens in the hush of late evening. She is not unkind, but her self-worth glints like a fragile coin, valued only for results, almost never for presence. She has learned to trust the solid ground, the provable path, the logic that moves one outcome to the next like stepping stones. Success has come to her through discipline, through the careful management of variables, through the belief that if she can just think hard enough, plan thoroughly enough, she can prevent any unwanted outcome from occurring. Her colleagues admire her precision. Her boss relies on her ability to see 3 moves ahead. Her friends know to call her when they need practical solutions, when emotion needs to be translated into actionable steps. But lately, the certainty she has always crafted for herself has started to feel confining, brittle, like a cage lined with her own best intentions. She senses, at the edges, the tug of realities unseen and unchosen. The missed invitation because it didn't fit her schedule, the sudden idea dismissed in favor of a safer plan, the instinct to rest overridden by another task she convinced herself was urgent. Every evening brings this same tension, the pull between what she thinks she should do and what her body quietly asks for. She wonders, as she readies for bed, why sleep alone feels both mysterious and necessary. A surrender she does not understand, but craves. What has brought her to this moment is an ordinary crisis with extraordinary weight. A project at work has unraveled in a way she did not anticipate. Despite every contingency planned, results refused to follow. The board meeting is in 2 days, and Maya has run every scenario, tested every approach, worked through countless revisions, yet nothing feels right. Maya stayed late each night this week, rearranging variables, seeking the elusive formula for certainty. She color-coded her notes in 5 different systems. She built spreadsheets within spreadsheets, each tab a different contingency. She scheduled backup plans for her backup plans, created decision trees that branched into infinite complexity. Yet the more she forced solutions, the more elusive they became. The project seemed to actively resist her attempts to pin it down, shifting its requirements each time she thought she'd found solid ground. Colleagues began to notice the tightness in her jaw, the way her contributions had become more rigid, less inspired, more defensive. In yesterday's brainstorming session, someone had offered a suggestion Maya immediately dismissed. Too risky, too unconventional, too far from proven methods. But later that night, alone in her apartment with takeout she barely tasted, she wondered if her dismissal had been too quick, if perhaps her need for control had closed off an avenue worth exploring. She felt herself narrowing, contracting around a single point of focus that grew smaller with each passing day. It was like watching herself through the wrong end of a telescope, everything else fading to darkness while she stared at one impossibly distant star. Now, tonight, she is exhausted by her own making, a perfectionist on the edge of release. Her apartment is perched high above the city, its broad windows framing a mosaic of lights and gentle night sounds. The living room is understated, calming, plush armchair in deep grey, single-potted orchid on the windowsill, shelves of books organised by subject and then by colour. Evidence of someone who loves both order and curiosity. Outside, distant traffic hums steady as a river, softened by the hush that falls when most of the world sleeps. A siren wails somewhere far below, then fades into the general murmur of the city. The cool wooden floor beneath her bare feet, the subtle scent of jasmine tea forgotten on the table, the weight of a favourite blanket draped over the chair. These small textures draw her gently back to her own senses. There is comfort in these details. Each anchors Maya to the present, as if her body remembers something her mind resists. That safety is not always found in control, but in attention. The apartment itself seems to breathe around her, expanding and contracting with the rhythm of night. Creaks settling, curtains shifting with invisible air currents. The refrigerator's distant hum cycling on and off. On her nightstand, a notebook lies open to a half-finished thought, tracing the beginnings of a question she never dared to finish. The pen rests in the crease between pages, marking the place where certainty gave way to wondering. She'd written, "What if I'm solving the wrong problem? What if the problem isn't that I haven't found the right answer, but that I'm asking the wrong?" And there the sentence stops, abandoned when her phone buzzed with another urgent email. Tonight, she lets her palm rest lightly upon the notebook, feeling, rather than solving, the unanswered space. The room is dim, lit only by the amber glow of a single lamp, casting soft shadows that seem to breathe with her. She notices how the shadows move when she shifts slightly, how they're not fixed but fluid, responsive to the smallest change in light, dancing along the walls like silent partners in her evening ritual. The initial challenge smoulders in the quiet. For someone whose confidence has always come from control, surrender feels foreign, almost dangerous. The word itself carries connotations she's been trained to avoid: weakness, defeat, passivity. Yet Maya senses the cost of clinging too tightly, the narrower future, the brittle joy that cracks under pressure, the creativity lost in perfection, the opportunities missed because they didn't fit her predetermined vision of success. And so, in the space before sleep, she faces an unspoken crossroads. Will she keep shaping her reality through force, collapsing every uncertainty to match her will? Or will she become a different kind of observer, willing to watch the infinite tapestry of possibility unfold beyond what she can plan? For the first time, Maya understands. True power may lie in watching rather than wielding, observing her life with the patient curiosity of someone who finally trusts the unknown. The night unfolds slowly as Maya settles beneath the covers, the sounds of the city muffled by heavy curtains. Her mind begins its familiar litany, reviewing every problem unsolved, every outcome unsatisfactory, every missed opportunity catalogued with clinical precision. She mentally replays the board presentation she's been preparing. Slide 12 needs revision. The third quarter projections might be too conservative. Should she emphasize the risk mitigation strategies or focus on growth potential? Both? Neither. The questions spiral, each one spawning 3 more, until her thoughts become a tangle of considerations with no clear path through. She feels the habitual urge to reach for her phone, to check, to plan, to fix, to send one more email that might clarify one more detail, to control the morning before it even arrives. But tonight, for reasons she cannot name, she lets her hand fall away. The phone stays dark on the nightstand, its notifications silenced, its demands temporarily suspended. This small act of resistance feels significant, like choosing a different path in a recurring dream. Sleep does not come easily to the determined. Maya's thoughts tangle like unwound thread. Each time she tries to order them, the mess seems to grow. She remembers her father's words from childhood. Don't let the answer slip away, Maya. If you pause, someone else will solve it first. He'd said it with love, with encouragement, wanting to instill in her a competitive edge that would serve her well in the world. For years, her restlessness has felt like loyalty to him, to herself, to the standards she'd internalized so deeply they became indistinguishable from her own desires. She's never questioned whether this constant vigilance, this perpetual readiness to act, might be costing her something essential. But tonight, her certainty falters. She wonders if her father, in his wisdom about success, had accidentally taught her something about fear. That pausing meant falling behind, that rest was indistinguishable from giving up, that stillness was the enemy of achievement. She recalls a passage from a book she once read about quantum theory, that observation collapses all possibilities into a single reality. In labs far from her apartment, scientists have watched particles behave differently depending on whether they are seen. The famous double-slit experiment revealed that electrons exist as waves of probability until the moment someone observes them. Then they become particles, fixed in space and time. She'd found the concept fascinating when she first encountered it years ago, but abstract, disconnected from her daily life of spreadsheets and strategy sessions and stakeholder management. Now, lying in the dark, she wonders, can a thought be like a particle? Is she, in chasing one answer with such single-minded focus, closing off others she has not even imagined? Perhaps her relentless focus, her insistence on finding the right solution, is itself collapsing possibilities before they have a chance to fully form. Perhaps there are entire futures she's been dismissing without even knowing they exist, simply because her attention is so narrowly focused on the future she's already decided must happen. The paradox wraps quietly around her mind softening her usual defenses, creating space where there was only pressure before. Maya drifts in and out of awareness. The air is cool on her cheek, her heartbeat slow and rhythmic, a drum keeping time in the cathedral of her chest. In the haze of pre-sleep, her consciousness shifts. Familiar logic loosens its hold. The sharp edges of her thoughts begin to blur, becoming less insistent, less demanding of immediate resolution. She imagines herself not as problem solver, not as architect of certainty, but as pure observer. What if she could watch her thoughts without intervening? What if letting them pass allowed new patterns to emerge, possibilities that the waking mind, so intent on fixing, could never see? What if the very act of trying to control was what prevented the natural intelligence of situations from revealing itself? Outside, a breeze stirs the orchid's leaves against the window. A soft rustling, barely audible, like whispered secrets between plant and glass. Maya listens. For a moment, the distance between herself and the world dissolves. She becomes the witness, not the doer. In this gentle awareness, she feels a glimmer of freedom, of expansion, as if the room itself has grown larger, as if the walls have stepped back to give her breathing room. The guide arrives not as a person, but as a presence, a deep, still voice within, neither her own voice nor anyone else's, but something that emerges from the space between thoughts. It asks no questions, offers no opinions, makes no demands. It simply invites her to notice, without judgment, the unfolding of her own experience. Maya resists at first, wanting to grasp, to direct, to make something happen with this new awareness. Surely there's a way to use this insight strategically, to turn observation itself into another tool for control, another technique to master and deploy. But slowly, as exhaustion settles in like a gentle fog, she feels herself relaxing into the role of observer. Each thought, each sensation appears and disappears on its own, needing nothing from her but attention. A worry about tomorrow's meeting arises, peaks with a little surge of anxiety, and fades like a wave retreating from shore. A memory of her mother's laugh surfaces unexpectedly, brings a moment of warmth that spreads through her chest, then drifts away. An itch on her left shoulder demands attention, then releases before she even moves to scratch it, dissolving on its own. She notices the weight of her head on the pillow, how it creates a small depression, how the foam remembers the shape of her. The coolness of the sheets against her skin, crisp and clean, laundered yesterday. The distant sound of a siren fading into silence, a story she'll never know the ending to. None of these require her intervention. They simply are, occurring in their own time, following their own rhythm, part of the vast choreography of existence that continues whether she manages it or not. And in this noticing, something shifts. The urgency that has driven her for so long begins to quiet, replaced by a curious spaciousness. It's as if her mind, relieved of the constant pressure to solve and fix and optimize, can finally stretch out, can finally breathe, can finally remember that it's allowed to simply be. Somewhere in the drifting boundary between waking and sleep, that liminal space the ancients called the threshold, Maya feels a shift. Her chest loosens, her hands unclench. Her jaw, which she hadn't realized was tight, softens. Her shoulders drop away from her ears. One by one, the tensions she's been carrying release their grip, not through effort, but through the simple act of acknowledgement. Memories flicker up, not just of failures, but of spontaneous joys she never anticipated. A friend's unexpected kindness during a difficult week, bringing soup when Maya had the flu, and sitting with her even though she was contagious. A creative spark that came not from planning, but from play, from doodling in a meeting, and suddenly seeing a pattern no one else had noticed. The time a solution presented itself in the shower when she'd finally stopped trying to force it. The answer arriving complete and elegant, as if it had been waiting all along for her to stop looking. The sunset she noticed on her way home that stopped her mid-step with its impossible beauty. Oranges and purples she couldn't have imagined, painted across clouds by a hand she'd never credited. She remembers the afternoon she took a different route to the coffee shop on a whim, breaking her usual pattern, and discovered a small park she'd never known existed, complete with a fountain and benches shaded by old trees, whose roots had buckled the pavement in patient testimony to time's passage. She'd sat there for 20 minutes, letting herself simply be, watching pigeons and children and clouds, and returned to work later with a clarity she hadn't felt in weeks. The guide whispers again, wordless. You are more than the sum of your solutions. The world, Maya begins to realize, is larger than her imagination can hold. She lies at the edge of infinite possibility, each moment teeming with futures waiting to be witnessed into being. Her breathing deepens, becomes more regular, finding its own rhythm without her conscious direction, her body remembering what her mind keeps forgetting. The transition into sleep approaches like a gentle tide, neither rushed nor resisted, simply arriving with the inevitability of natural rhythms. In this liminal space, the boundaries of her identity begin to soften. Who is Maya, if not the woman who solves, who controls, who manages every variable? The question doesn't frighten her as it once might have. Instead, it opens a door she didn't know existed, revealing a room she's always lived in, but never truly inhabited, a space within herself that has nothing to prove and nowhere to get to. Maya's dreams unfurl like soft ribbons, vivid and strange, more real than memory. She stands at the threshold of a vast field, stars glimmering above her in constellations she doesn't recognize, patterns that speak a language she's forgotten but somehow still understands. Every blade of grass trembles with possibility, each one a pathway, each one a choice, each one equally valid. The field extends to the horizon in all directions, gently rolling, infinite in its scope, neither welcoming nor unwelcoming, but simply present, simply available. In the dream, she senses the presence of her younger self, a child unburdened by outcome, drawn to wonder as naturally as flowers turn toward light. The child looks about 7 years old, wearing a yellow sundress Maya recognizes from old photographs stored in boxes in her parents' attic. Her feet are bare, grass-stained and dirty in the way children's feet should be. Her hair wild and uncombed in a way adult Maya would never allow, tangled with small twigs and what might be flowers. The child looks up at her with wide, curious eyes, and Maya feels a sudden ache of recognition that brings tears she doesn't try to stop. This is who she was before she learned that value comes only through achievement, before she understood that the world rewards results, not presence, before someone taught her to measure herself against impossible standards and find herself perpetually lacking. "What do you see?" the child asks, her voice soft as wind through grass, innocent as morning, patient as stone. Maya tries to answer, but words fail her. She looks out at the field and realizes she doesn't know what she sees. Is it opportunity? Is it chaos? Is it freedom, or just another problem to be solved, another landscape to be mapped and mastered? She feels the urge to choose, to define, to limit, to make clear, to turn this infinite field into something manageable, something with boundaries and goals and measurable outcomes and key performance indicators. But in this dream space, her only task is to observe, to let the patterns emerge on their own, to trust the intelligence of the unfolding. She begins to realize the freedom in this surrender. The field is alive with futures, none competing, all possible, all equally real in this moment, before choice collapses them into singularity. Some paths lead to the left, disappearing into a small forest at the field's edge, where she can hear birds singing songs she's never heard. Others lead right, toward what looks like distant mountains, their peaks catching light that seems to come from no particular source. Still others wind straight ahead into the starlit unknown, toward horizons that recede as she approaches, always beckoning, never arriving. The child weaves among the grass, lifting pebbles, marveling at how each one glows with potential. She holds them up to Maya, showing her with the pride of discovery. This one shimmers blue like deep ocean water. This one pulses with golden light like contained sunshine. This one seems to contain entire galaxies in its surface, spiraling arms of light within light. "Look," she says, "look how beautiful they all are. You don't have to choose just one." Maya wants to ask which one is the right one, which one she should choose, which one will lead to the outcome she's supposed to achieve. But she knows the question misses the point entirely, reveals how deeply she's been conditioned to see beauty as something to be acquired rather than witnessed. Maya watches, heart swelling with an unfamiliar hope that feels dangerous and necessary. Here, observation is not passive. It is creative, participatory, generative. Her presence, open and unattached, brings meaning forth without effort, without force, without the exhausting labor of making things happen. The guide returns, this time as a warm shadow beside her, neither male nor female, neither young nor old, neither inside nor outside, but somehow both. It speaks in a voice that seems to come from within her own chest, resonant and calm, familiar as her own heartbeat. You believed your task was to collapse probabilities, to make one thing happen, to force one result, to narrow infinity into singularity. But the universe is more generous than you imagine, more abundant than your scarcity thinking allows. In stillness, in observation, your awareness shapes what becomes real. Release your grip and notice what you have missed. Maya wishes to protest. It feels dangerous, this letting go. The corporate world doesn't reward observation. It rewards action, decisiveness, the appearance of certainty even when none exists, the confidence to make calls with incomplete information. Her entire career has been built on her ability to assess situations quickly and commit to a course of action, to be the one people can count on to make the hard calls. Hesitation is seen as weakness. Uncertainty is a luxury her position doesn't afford. Second-guessing is career suicide. Yet she remembers the stubbornness that cost her nights of sleep, weeks of grinding anxiety, the frustration of answers that refused to crystallize, no matter how hard she squeezed. The way her body had begun to carry the weight of all that forcing, tension in her shoulders like iron bands, a persistent headache behind her eyes that no medication could touch, exhaustion that sleep couldn't cure, because her sleep itself had become another battlefield, another arena for control and optimization. She feels, for the first time with true clarity, the cost of always being the doer, always being the one who has the answer, always being the person who holds it all together while quietly falling apart. With each breath in the dream, Maya becomes more attuned to the subtleties of her inner world. The flutter of anxiety like a small bird against her ribs, the warmth of curiosity spreading through her chest like honey dissolving in tea, the desire to rest settling into her bones like an old friend finally welcomed home after years of exile. She notices how, when she allows herself to be with these feelings without striving to fix them or change them or transcend them, they shift on their own. Tension melts, replaced by quiet wonder. The anxiety doesn't disappear entirely, but it becomes less solid, less threatening, less like a permanent condition and more like weather passing through. It's just a sensation, just energy moving through her body, no more permanent than the breeze that stirs the grass, no more meaningful than she chooses to make it. In the openness of night, new insights arise unbidden. The project that unraveled may have carried lessons undiscovered. The failure she feared could offer new directions if only she dared to look. What if the board presentation doesn't need to be perfect? What if showing them the uncertainty, the genuine complexity of the situation, the multiple pathways, each with their own risks and possibilities, would actually build more trust than presenting a facade of absolute certainty? What if they're tired of certainty, tired of being told there's one right answer, tired of leaders who pretend to know more than anyone can possibly know? She recalls moments at work when, pressed for a solution, she relaxed her grip, and unexpected brilliance surfaced in the silence that followed. A colleague's offhand comment that revealed the key insight she'd been missing because she was so focused on her own predetermined solution. A pattern she noticed only when she stopped searching for it so desperately, when her vision widened from laser focus to peripheral awareness. The solution that arrived in the space between meetings, when her mind was occupied with something else entirely, when her conscious problem-solving had finally taken a break, and her unconscious wisdom had room to speak. Your consciousness, the guide intones, is not a hammer, it is light. A hammer forces, splits, shapes through violence, through the application of directed force to resistant material. But light simply reveals what was always there, waiting to be seen, illuminating without changing, showing without forcing, making visible without making different. In this paradoxical wisdom, Maya finds rest. She glimpses her life as a web of infinite outcomes, each waiting for her gentle attention. Not her control, not her management, not her optimization, just her willingness to notice. The dream deepens, becomes more textured, more real than waking life, more vivid than any memory. Maya finds herself walking through the field, and with each step, she notices how the landscape shifts, not dramatically, but subtly, responding to her presence in ways she's just beginning to understand. A tree that wasn't there a moment ago now stands tall and ancient, its branches spreading wide like arms opening to embrace the sky. Or perhaps it was always there, and she's only now paying enough attention to see it, only now slowing down enough for her perception to catch up with reality. A stream appears, its water so clear she can see every stone at the bottom, see how the current shapes itself around obstacles without resistance or resentment, how it finds its way forward without forcing, without planning, without strategizing, simply following the path of least resistance and somehow arriving exactly where it needs to be, eventually reaching the ocean no matter how many times it's diverted. She understands, without being told, that her attention is creating this world, or perhaps revealing what was always there, hidden beneath her assumptions about what should be, waiting patiently for her to stop imposing and start noticing. The child runs ahead, then turns back, laughing with pure joy, the kind of unself-conscious delight that adults forget is possible. "Come see," she calls, bouncing on her toes with excitement. Maya follows, her adult wariness giving way to curiosity, her need to assess for danger finally relaxing its vigilant grip. What she finds takes her breath away. A garden of impossible flowers, each one a different color, some hues she has never seen in waking life. And suspects don't exist in the normal spectrum of visible light. Colors that have no names, because human language hasn't needed to describe them. They pulse with a gentle light from within, and as she watches, they open and close in rhythm with her breathing. When she inhales, they open wider, petals spreading like hands unclenching, and when she exhales, they close slightly, a perfect synchronization between her body and this dream landscape, as if the boundary between her and the world has become permeable, negotiable, collaborative rather than oppositional. "This is what you've been missing," the guide says, its voice full of compassion rather than judgment, offering observation rather than criticism. All the possibilities you collapsed before they could bloom, because you were so certain you knew what should happen, because you believed that knowing was better than wondering, because you trusted your plans more than you trusted the intelligence of emergence. Maya reaches out to touch one of the flowers, and as her fingers brush its petals, she feels a rush of emotion. Grief for all the beauty she's overlooked in her hurry to get somewhere else. Joy at discovering it now. Gratitude that it waited. And beneath both, a deep sense of homecoming, of returning to a country she left so long ago, she forgot it existed. This garden has always been here, has always been part of her, waiting for her to slow down enough to notice, patient as only growing things can be patient. The flower she's touching begins to glow brighter, and she realizes her attention is feeding it, nurturing it, allowing it to become more fully itself, calling it into fuller expression, not through force, but through the simple gift of being seen. "How long have I been blind?" she wonders aloud, the question not rhetorical, but genuine, curious rather than self-flagellating. The guide's laughter is gentle, without judgment, full of warmth like sunlight on bare skin. You were never blind. You were focused. There is a difference. Focus isn't wrong. It's necessary, useful, powerful. But focus, when it becomes rigid, when it refuses to widen or shift, creates its own kind of blindness. The art is learning when to focus and when to expand your vision, when to act and when to observe, when to direct and when to allow, when to hold and when to release. This is the ancient wisdom, the balance the Greeks called sophrosin, not moderation in the sense of mediocrity or holding back, but the perfect harmony between opposites, the dynamic equilibrium that allows you to move between poles without getting stuck at either extreme. Maya sits down among the flowers, feeling the soft earth beneath her, still warm from a sun that doesn't exist in this dream space. Heat rising from some internal source she doesn't need to understand. The child sits beside her, leaning against her shoulder with easy trust, with the unself-conscious affection children show before they learn to guard their hearts, before they discover that love can be weaponized, before trust becomes something that must be earned rather than freely given. They sit in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead, and Maya realizes this is what she's been missing. Not more strategies or better solutions or optimal outcomes, but this: presence, stillness, the willingness to be rather than do. Time moves differently here, or perhaps it doesn't move at all. Perhaps time itself is another construct of the waking mind that can be suspended when consciousness shifts into these other modes. Past and future seem to coexist with the present, all equally real, all equally accessible, all existing simultaneously in a way that would be impossible in waking logic, but feels perfectly natural here. She can see versions of herself branching out from this moment, the one who returns to rigid control, doubling down on what's familiar, the one who learns to balance, dancing between structure and flow, the one who gives up control entirely and drifts without direction, overcorrecting into passivity. All of them possible, all of them waiting, none of them predetermined. She understands that this is what sleep offers, a departure from linear time, from cause and effect, from the tyranny of having to choose one reality over another, from the pressure of decisions that feel permanent and irreversible. In dreams, all possibilities remain open. In sleep, the rigid structures of waking consciousness dissolve, and the mind can play with infinite configurations of meaning, can try on different selves, different futures, different ways of being, rehearsing possibilities without commitment, exploring territories without the risk of getting lost, because you can always wake up, always return to the familiar shore, even after sailing far into unknown waters. This is not escape. Maya realizes with sudden clarity. This is expansion. This is not avoidance of reality, but a deeper engagement with it. This is the mind's way of practicing flexibility, of remembering that reality is more fluid than it appears during the day, when the demands of consistency and logic create the illusion of a fixed world. When we forget that everything solid was once possibility, when we mistake the map for the territory. The guide speaks again, its voice blending with the sound of wind through grass, becoming indistinguishable from the natural soundscape. Tomorrow, when you wake, you won't remember all of this. The details will fade like most dreams do, dissolving in daylight like mist. But something will have changed. The neural pathways in your brain will have reorganized themselves slightly, subtly, almost imperceptibly. New connections will have formed between neurons that have never communicated before, creating circuits that didn't exist yesterday. Old patterns will have weakened, their synapses pruned away to make room for new growth, like a gardener clearing space for spring planting. This is the work of sleep, not just rest, but transformation, not just recovery, but reorganization, not just repair, but renewal. Your consciousness, freed from the demands of waking life, can explore possibilities it would normally dismiss as impractical, impossible, irrelevant, unproductive. It can practice new ways of being, new responses to old challenges, can rehearse futures without the risk of actual consequence, can make mistakes that leave no trace except wisdom, can die 1,000 deaths and wake up alive. Maya feels the truth of this in her body. Even here, in the dream, she can sense the subtle rewiring happening deep in her brain, below the threshold of conscious awareness. Synapses firing in new patterns, creating trails through neural wilderness, paths that will still be there tomorrow, even if she doesn't consciously remember making them. Routes that her waking mind will follow without knowing why. Finding that certain thoughts connect more easily, certain responses feel more natural, memories being consolidated, not just stored, but integrated, woven into the larger tapestry of her understanding, contextualized and recontextualized until they transform from isolated incidents into meaningful patterns. Her identity itself is being gently reshaped, not by force, but by the simple act of allowing, of observing, of being open to what might emerge from the depths of her own being. The child looks up at her one more time, and Maya sees in those young eyes something she recognizes. Not innocence exactly, because children aren't really innocent in the way adults romanticize, but openness, availability, the willingness to be surprised by the world, the capacity for wonder that adults condition out of themselves in the name of sophistication. "Will you remember me?" the child asks, and the question carries layers of meaning. Will you remember who you were? Will you remember this is still available? Will you remember that wonder and competence aren't enemies? Will you remember that you can be powerful without being controlling? That you can be responsible without being rigid? That you can be successful without sacrificing your capacity for joy? Maya smiles, feeling tears on her cheeks, though she doesn't recall crying. Warm tracks on cool skin. "I'll remember what you showed me," she says. "I'll remember that I once knew how to wonder without needing to know all the answers. That curiosity and certainty don't have to be enemies. That there's a kind of wisdom in not knowing, a kind of strength in admitting confusion, a kind of courage in saying, 'I don't know yet,' instead of pretending to have it figured out." The child nods, satisfied, then stands and walks back toward the field, her yellow dress bright against the darkening sky. As Maya watches her go, she notices that the child is leaving footprints of light, each one glowing softly in the grass, persistent for a moment before fading, but not disappearing entirely, still visible if you know how to look. If you remember that light leaves traces even after its source has moved on. The path she creates winds through the field, not straight, but meandering, following curiosity rather than destination, valuing the journey over the arrival. It curves around interesting rocks, veers toward a patch of wildflowers, doubles back when something catches her attention, traces a pattern that has its own logic, even if it's not the logic of efficiency, even if it wouldn't optimize for any metric Maya has ever been measured by. This, Maya understands, is the path forward. not the rigid line she's been trying to walk, forcing herself to stay on course no matter what interesting possibilities appear to either side, treating deviation as failure, treating exploration as distraction, but a gentler way that allows for deviation, for discovery, for the unexpected turn that leads somewhere more interesting than she could have planned, for the serendipity that only appears when you're willing to be found by what you weren't looking for. The dream begins to fade, the colors becoming less vivid, the sounds more distant, the sharp details softening into impressions. But before it disappears entirely, Maya takes one last look around, trying to memorize the feeling of this place. The openness, the possibility, the sense that she doesn't have to have everything figured out to move forward. That uncertainty isn't the same as being lost. That not knowing where you're going can be the beginning of actually arriving somewhere worth being. Morning seeps through the curtains, strokes of gold across the bed sheets, gentle and unhurried. Maya wakes slowly, more gently than she has in months, the dream lingering at the edge of memory like a melody she can't quite place, but recognizes as important. It would be easy, she knows, to resume old habits, check her phone immediately, scan for emergencies, draft a revised solution before breakfast, return to the familiar urgency of action that has defined her adult life, slip back into the comfortable discomfort of constant productivity. But something within her hesitates, attuned to a new softness, listening to a quieter voice. She lies still for a moment, allowing herself to simply be awake without immediately doing. This simple act feels revolutionary, feels like a small rebellion against every productivity book she's ever read, every time management seminar she's attended, every voice that told her that lying in bed without a purpose is lazy, is wasteful, is the first step toward mediocrity. The light on the ceiling creates patterns as it filters through the curtains, shifting slightly as a breeze moves the fabric, geometric shadows that dance without music. The sound of birds outside, their morning conversations complex and unhurried, coordinating their day without spreadsheets or calendar invites. The gentle weight of the blanket, the softness of the pillow still holding the shape of her head, the coolness of air against her face. All of it registers with unusual clarity, as if some filter has been removed from her perception, as if she's seeing her familiar bedroom for the first time, as if waking up could be its own kind of miracle if she lets it. She feels rested in a way she hasn't in months, maybe years. Not just physically, though her body does feel more relaxed, but mentally, as if some essential part of herself has been renewed, as if she's recovered something she didn't even know she'd lost. Today, a fresh challenge waits. The board meeting is tomorrow. The work project remains unresolved, her inbox undoubtedly bristling with demands and questions, her calendar packed with competing priorities. But rather than lunging into action, rather than reaching for her phone to see what's accumulated overnight, like checking traps she's set for herself, Maya pauses. She sits on the edge of her bed, feet on the cool floor, grounding, and closes her eyes. She takes a slow breath, feeling the air fill her lungs, expanding her ribs, and allows her thoughts to surface one by one. Instead of grasping at answers, instead of immediately trying to organize and prioritize and solve and execute, she observes, curious, unattached, practicing this new way of being with her own mind. Some ideas fade, proving themselves less urgent than they felt last night, revealing themselves as anxiety dressed up as priority. Others shimmer unexpectedly, inviting further attention, not because they're the obvious solution, but because they carry a quality of rightness she's learning to trust, a resonance she's starting to recognize. In the shower, she notices the pattern of water against tile, the way steam softens the edges of everything, turning the familiar bathroom into something slightly mysterious, slightly new, slightly full of possibility. She doesn't push these observations away in favor of planning her day, doesn't scold herself for wasting time, doesn't rush through to get to the important stuff. She lets them be, trusting that her mind is working even when she's not consciously directing it, that there's an intelligence to letting things unfold rather than forcing them into predetermined shapes, that the best ideas often arrive when you're paying attention to something else entirely. And sure enough, as she's drying her hair, an insight arrives, not forced, but emerging naturally from the spaciousness she's created, rising to the surface like something that's been underwater finally allowed to float. A new approach to the project, one that honors the complexity rather than trying to reduce it to a single solution, one that presents multiple pathways forward and invites the board into the decision-making process rather than trying to have everything figured out in advance. One that treats them as collaborators rather than judges. It's riskier in some ways, requires her to be more vulnerable, admits what she doesn't know instead of pretending certainty, but it also feels more honest, more aligned with the actual situation they're facing, more likely to generate buy-in because people support what they help create. At breakfast, she writes it down, but without the usual urgency, without the anxiety that good ideas evaporate if not immediately captured and executed. The idea will keep, it will develop. It might even improve if she gives it space to breathe. She doesn't need to collapse it into action immediately, doesn't need to work out every detail this moment, doesn't need to have the perfect presentation by this afternoon. The simple act of trusting that the insight won't disappear if she doesn't immediately capture and perfect it feels like a small miracle, like evidence that reality might be more generous than she'd believed. She makes coffee slowly, measuring grounds, waiting for water to boil, actually tasting it instead of drinking it as fuel, noticing the bitterness and the warmth and the way it wakes her body, and eats breakfast at the table instead of standing at the counter trying to multitask, reading news on her phone, checking email, planning her commute. These small changes might seem insignificant to an outside observer, but to Maya, they represent a profound shift. From doing to being, from constant productivity to occasional presence, from using her morning to launch into the day to allowing her morning to be its own experience worth having. At the office, the day unfolds with a different quality, like a familiar song played in a new key. At a morning meeting, when a colleague proposes an unconventional idea, the very same colleague she dismissed 2 days ago with barely concealed impatience, Maya notices the instinct to judge, to dismiss, to steer the conversation back to familiar territory where she feels competent and in control. The familiar tightness rises in her chest. the urge to shut down uncertainty before it can create complications, before it can threaten the timeline, before it can expose her inability to control every variable. Yet, she lets the moment breathe and discovers that letting go of the need to control creates room for collective brilliance. She takes a breath before responding, notices the urge to react, chooses something different. Instead of explaining why the idea won't work, cataloguing the obstacles, listing the reasons they should stick with the proven approach, she asks a question. What would that look like in practice? Tell me more about what you're seeing. The colleague, surprised by the genuine curiosity in Maya's voice, by the space being offered instead of resistance being mounted, begins to elaborate. And as she does, another team member sees a connection to something they've been working on in a different context, builds on it, adds a layer. Within minutes, the group has arrived at a solution more elegant than anything Maya could have forced into being, more comprehensive because it integrates multiple perspectives, more robust because it's been stress-tested through dialogue. She contributes, but differently now, offering observations rather than directives, asking questions rather than providing answers, noticing connections rather than insisting on particular paths, holding space rather than filling it. Her colleagues seem energized by this shift, leaning forward, building on each other's thoughts, the conversation taking on a momentum of its own, becoming larger than any individual contribution. One person mentions a vendor relationship that could be leveraged in ways they hadn't considered before. Another sees how this connects to the client's underlying needs in a way their previous approach missed entirely, addressing root causes instead of surface symptoms. A third suggests a timeline that actually feels achievable rather than punishing, that builds in buffer instead of assuming everything will go perfectly. The meeting ends with a clarity and consensus that usually takes weeks to achieve. And Maya realizes that by trying less hard to control the outcome, by getting out of the way of the collective intelligence in the room, she's actually helped create a better result. Through the day, Maya practices the art of observation without attachment. When anxiety flares during a difficult conversation with her boss about the revised approach, when he questions whether she's confident in this direction, whether she's thought it through, whether she's sure this is the best use of resources, she greets it as an old friend, not an enemy. She notices where it lives in her body, the tightness in her throat making it hard to swallow, the quickening of her pulse, the impulse to defend and justify and prove and convince and overwhelm with data until doubt is impossible. And rather than trying to suppress these sensations or override them with forced confidence, with a performance of certainty, she simply acknowledges their presence. Hello, fear. I see you. You're trying to protect me. Thank you. And in that seeing, without trying to change or fix or transcend, the anxiety loses some of its power. She's able to be honest with her boss in a way she never has before. This approach feels more aligned with the actual complexity we're facing. I don't have everything figured out, and honestly, I'm not sure anyone could at this stage. But I believe this direction gives us the best chance of creating something sustainable, something that serves the actual need, rather than just looking good on paper. To her surprise, he nods, seems almost relieved, his shoulders dropping slightly. I appreciate you saying that, he tells her, and she hears something in his voice she's never heard before. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Honestly, some of your previous proposals felt too neat, like maybe we were missing something, like you were giving me what you thought I wanted to hear instead of what you actually thought. This feels more real. This feels like something I can actually trust, because you're trusting me with uncertainty instead of selling me false certainty. When new possibilities arise in the afternoon, an invitation to collaborate on a project outside her usual area, something that doesn't clearly advance her career trajectory but sounds genuinely interesting. A chance meeting with someone from another department who mentions an opening she might be interested in. A lateral move that could become something more. She welcomes their uncertainty, grateful for the expansion they bring. She doesn't immediately analyze whether these opportunities fit her 5-year plan, doesn't run them through her usual decision matrix to determine if they're the optimal use of her time and energy, doesn't calculate ROI before allowing herself to be curious. She lets them exist as possibilities, neither grasping nor rejecting, understanding that not everything needs to be decided immediately, that some things become clearer with time and attention rather than immediate analysis, that committing too quickly can close off better options that need time to reveal themselves. Each time she resists the urge to collapse reality into what she thinks should happen, the world feels a little wider, a little brighter, as if she's been looking at everything through a narrow aperture and is just now beginning to open it up, letting more light in, seeing more of what's actually there, rather than only what she expected to find. By evening, Maya is tired, but not exhausted. It's the good tiredness that comes from engagement, rather than the depleting fatigue of constant control, from being present, rather than perpetually managing, from responding, rather than forcing. She realizes that she's made it through an entire day without the persistent background anxiety that usually accompanies her like a shadow she can't escape. That constant hum of not enoughness that usually narrates her internal experience. Not because everything went perfectly. There were still challenges, still uncertainties, still moments of doubt and frustration. But because she met them differently, with curiosity rather than defensiveness, with openness rather than rigidity, with the willingness to not know rather than the pressure to appear certain. Her transformation is not dramatic. No sudden enlightenment, no complete personality overhaul, no before and after moment suitable for inspirational social media posts. It's a subtle unfolding, a quiet revolution of attention, a series of small choices that add up to something significant. The urge to solve never disappears entirely, and she suspects it never will, suspects she wouldn't want it to, because that drive, that analytical capability, is part of who she is part of what she brings to the world, and she's not trying to eliminate it. But Maya is learning to balance it with patience, with trust, with the understanding that some problems solve themselves when given space, that some questions are more valuable than their answers. That control is sometimes just fear wearing a productive mask, that not every moment needs to be optimized, that rest isn't the enemy of achievement, but its foundation. She's beginning to understand viscerally, not just intellectually, that there's a wisdom in not knowing that's different from ignorance. that uncertainty is the birthplace of possibility, that the moments when she feels most lost are often the moments right before a breakthrough she couldn't have planned. By nightfall, when she returns to her apartment, she notices the city lights not as background noise, but as glimmers of possibility, as evidence of life unfolding in patterns too complex for any single mind to map. Each window across the way represents a life unfolding, a story she'll never fully know, a reality that exists independent of her observation, yet somehow connected to it through the shared fabric of existence, through the web of consciousness that links all observers in ways physics is only beginning to map. She has become, at last, a conscious observer of her own unfolding. Her sleep that night is deep, a testament to the peace found not in answers, but in openness. The boundaries of her reality have softened. Choice has become not an obligation, but an invitation. Maya, once a relentless problem solver, is now a practitioner of quantum possibility. She understands that she doesn't have to force every outcome, that her awareness itself is creative, that observation, true, open, non-attached observation, is a form of power more subtle and more profound than control could ever be. Maya's journey closes not with triumph, but with a gentle, ongoing peace. She no longer measures her worth by outcomes. Her value rests in awareness, in the quiet courage to witness rather than control. Her days still bring challenges, but she meets them with curiosity, with non-attachment, with the understanding that every moment contains more possibilities than her conscious mind can conceive. The orchid by her window continues to bloom, slow and steady, a reminder that growth is not always forced but allowed. It opens its petals according to its own rhythm, responding to light and water and some internal knowing that Maya has no access to and no need to direct. She waters it weekly, gives it indirect sunlight, and otherwise leaves it alone to do what orchids do. This relationship with the plant has become, she realizes, a model for how she's learning to relate to her own life. Tending, but not controlling. Caring, but not forcing. Supporting conditions for growth without dictating the form that growth should take. The city hums on, indifferent to her transformation. Yet to Maya, each sound, each shimmer is imbued with new meaning. The distant traffic becomes a meditation on flow, on how thousands of individual decisions create patterns larger than any single intention. The lights across the way become a constellation of human possibility. Each person in those apartments making choices, observing their own lives, collapsing their own quantum possibilities into the realities they inhabit. All of us affecting each other in ways we'll never fully comprehend. In the safety of her home, Maya surrenders nightly to the unknown. Her sleep now a gateway, not a barrier. It's the doorway through which she passes into a larger version of herself, the laboratory where her consciousness experiments with new ways of being, the garden where impossible flowers bloom and child selves whisper wisdom the adult mind too easily dismisses. The future is uncertain, yet she no longer fears the space between questions and answers. To observe is enough, she has learned, and sometimes to do so with kindness is to reshape the fabric of reality itself. She's discovered that the quantum world physicists describe, where observation affects outcome, where possibilities remain open until witnessed, where consciousness and matter dance in intricate relationship, is not separate from daily life, but is the very texture of existence itself. Every choice she makes, every thought she thinks, every moment she pays attention to is an act of creation, collapsing infinite potential into actual experience. Now, as you rest, let Maya's story settle within you, like snow falling on quiet ground, each flake unique, each one adding to the peaceful accumulation of understanding. Notice the breath as it moves softly in and out, the rise and fall, the gentle expansion and release. The way your body knows how to breathe without your conscious direction has been breathing since before you were born, will continue until your last moment. This autonomic intelligence requires nothing from you but trust, just as your heart beats without instruction, just as your cells divide and repair, just as healing happens in the dark when you're not watching. Each inhale an invitation to receive, each exhale a letting go of what no longer serves. Remember, your awareness is spacious, vast enough to hold everything, able to witness thoughts and feelings as they come and go, no longer compelled to fix or force or make immediate sense of every sensation. In the act of observing, you are already enough. You don't need to add anything or become anything different. The simple presence of your attention is itself a creative act, is itself a form of power that doesn't require force, doesn't require control, doesn't require you to have it all figured out. Consider, as you lie here, how possibility opens when you release attachment to a single outcome. When you stop insisting that reality conform to your plans and start noticing what reality is actually offering. Like Maya, you hold the power to notice, the freedom to be present with all that arises, trusting that awareness itself transforms, that the quality of your attention shapes what becomes possible. You don't have to solve everything tonight. You don't have to figure out every answer, map every possibility, control every variable, anticipate every outcome. The work of transformation happens not through effort, but through rest, through the gentle reorganization of neural pathways that occurs when you finally stop pushing and simply allow when you trust the intelligence of your own system to do its work without micromanagement. When you remember that you are not a machine to be operated, but a living system with its own wisdom. Let these words repeat softly in your mind, each turn of phrase an echo of possibility, a gentle reminder of what you already know in your bones. You are the observer. You are the field of unfolding. There is nothing you must fix now. There is only the gentle witnessing of your own becoming, the patient watching of possibilities as they arise and dissolve, the kind attention to this moment exactly as it is. Your consciousness, like Maya's, has been collapsing possibilities through force, through fear, through the belief that control is the only path to safety, through the conviction that if you just try hard enough, think clearly enough, plan thoroughly enough, you can prevent anything unwanted from happening. But tonight, you're invited to practice a different way, to experiment with a new mode of being. Tonight, you can let the quantum field of possibility remain open a little longer. You can resist the urge to collapse everything into certainty, and instead, rest in the spaciousness of not knowing, in the fertility of uncertainty, in the creative potential of questions that don't immediately demand answers, in the wisdom of admitting that some things take time to reveal themselves, that some answers can only arrive when you stop searching so desperately. As you drift deeper into sleep, imagine each thought that arises as a wave of probability, here and then gone, requiring nothing from you but acknowledgement, needing no response, no analysis, no judgment, no action. You don't have to chase them, hold them, solve them, or make them mean anything. They arise in consciousness and dissolve again, like breath, like dreams, like the days of your life moving through you, like water through a riverbed, shaping you gradually, gently, without force, carving channels that become deeper over time through patient repetition rather than violent intervention. Your body knows how to heal itself while you sleep. Cuts close, bones knit, inflammation reduces, tissues repair. Your mind knows how to reorganize itself, to strengthen some connections and weaken others, to integrate the day's experiences into new understanding, to build neural architectures that support the person you're becoming, to process emotions too complex for waking consciousness to hold, to solve problems that seemed impossible when you were trying too hard. You don't have to direct this process. You only have to allow it, to surrender to the wisdom of your own biology, your own consciousness, the ancient intelligence that has been guiding life for billions of years. The same intelligence that turns seeds into trees and cells into complex organisms. In sleep, you become both the observer and the observed. You watch your own transformation while simultaneously being transformed. This is the quantum mystery at the heart of existence. That observation changes what is observed, that consciousness shapes reality, that you are always and already creating your experience through the quality of your attention, through the presence or absence of attachment, through your willingness to see what is rather than only what you expect, through your capacity to be surprised by reality rather than only confirming what you already believe. Tonight, let your attention be soft, open, curious, kind. Let it be gentle to whatever it finds. The anxiety, the hope, the confusion, the clarity, the excitement, the grief, the longing, the contentment, all of it arising and dissolving in the vast space of your awareness, like clouds moving across an endless sky, each one temporary, each one changing, none of them defining the sky itself. Now, in this moment, as you sink deeper into rest, imagine tenderness wrapping around each thought, each worry, each concern, like a soft blanket of compassion. The world narrows to the hush within your breath, the quiet in your body, the weightlessness beneath your skin, the sense of being held by something larger than your individual will. You are no longer striving. You are floating in the openness of your own consciousness, held by the intelligence of life itself, supported by the same force that keeps planets in orbit and seasons in cycle. With each breath, let tension melt away like ice in warm water. Let the boundaries of your awareness soften into spacious silence, expanding outward until there's no clear distinction between you and the room, between the room and the night, between the night and the infinite space that holds all things. All is well. All has always been well, even in the difficult moments, even in the confusion, even in the pain. The urgent problems of the day lose their urgency in this space, revealing themselves for what they often are. Thoughts about future scenarios that may never come, concerns about past moments that cannot be changed, anxieties about outcomes that are not yours to control. They become simply information, simply data, simply part of the vast field of experience that moves through you but does not define you, that affects you but does not determine you. Now, sleep draws nearer, approaching like a trusted friend, familiar and welcome. Now, you are safe in this bed, in this room, in this moment that contains everything you need. Observe without reaching, without solving, without needing to make anything happen, without effort or force or will. Let the mystery of the night cradle you in its vast, impersonal kindness. You are here. You are whole. You are exactly where you need to be, even if it doesn't feel that way, even if you wish things were different, even if tomorrow brings challenges you don't feel ready for. Tonight, in sleep, countless possibilities bloom beyond intention, beyond planning, beyond your conscious direction. Futures you haven't imagined, solutions you haven't forced, versions of yourself you haven't yet discovered, relationships you haven't yet formed, insights you haven't yet received, all of them existing in superposition, waiting not for your control, but for your gentle observation, for your willingness to be surprised, for your capacity to notice what you didn't expect. Trust their wisdom. Trust the process of emergence, the intelligence of patterns forming themselves, the way answers arrive when you stop demanding them. Trust that your consciousness, even in sleep, is doing the work of transformation, is reorganizing itself in ways your waking mind cannot comprehend, is building bridges between neurons that will carry you toward a future more expansive than you can currently imagine, is preparing you for possibilities you don't yet have words for. Your awareness has the power to gently reshape your reality, not through force, but through presence, not through control, but through observation, not through manipulation, but through the simple gift of kind attention. As you release your grip on how things should be, you open space for how things might become, for emergence rather than force, for allowing rather than making, for discovering rather than deciding. In observing, you become the quiet creator of your own peace, the gentle architect of your own experience, the conscious participant in the unfolding of your life. Now, let yourself rest fully. Let yourself soften completely. Let yourself release entirely, knowing that everything you need is already present within you, already available, already here. There is no task to finish tonight, no answer to find before morning, no problem that cannot wait until daylight, no urgency that supersedes your need for deep restorative rest, no achievement that matters more than the healing that happens in sleep. Your body and mind are safe, free to sink into the deep restoration of sleep, into the repair and renewal that can only happen when you stop trying, when you finally let go, when you trust the wisdom of rest. Let Maya's journey echo in your dreams, the wisdom of observation, the release of control, the embrace of a world more expansive than certainty, the discovery that power comes not from forcing outcomes, but from allowing possibilities, from being present with what is rather than insisting on what should be. You are invited now to let go completely. Let go of the day behind you with its victories and defeats, its moments of grace and moments of struggle, its joys and its disappointments. Let go of the day ahead with its unknowns and demands, its possibilities and pressures, its questions you cannot yet answer. Let go of who you think you should be and rest in who you already are, already complete, already whole, already enough. Not because you've achieved everything, but because your worth is not contingent on outcomes. Let go of the need to know what happens next and rest in the willingness to discover it as it unfolds. To be surprised by the future rather than trying to control it. To meet what comes with curiosity rather than fear. With openness rather than defense. With the understanding that uncertainty is not the enemy, but the birthplace of all possibility. May sleep carry you gently, like a river carries a fallen leaf, with no resistance, no effort, just the natural movement of water finding its way. New possibilities bloom in the softest corners of your mind, in the spaces you're not watching, in the dark soil of the unconscious where transformation happens without fanfare, where the seed breaks open in silence, where roots grow downward before anything emerges into light. The story is finished, but your journey into awareness continues, quietly, safely, into the peace of night, into the rest that heals, into the sleep that transforms. Rest now, deeply and completely. Dream now, freely and without control. Become the observer of infinite possibility, the witness of your own unfolding, the space in which all experience arises and dissolves. All is well, truly and completely. You are safe, held by the intelligence of life itself. Sleep comes now, gentle and deep, inevitable and welcome, carrying you into transformation, into renewal, into the quantum field where all possibilities await your kind attention, where consciousness meets matter, where observer and observed dance together, where you are both the dreamer and the dream. Let go now, release now, sleep now, all is well. You are safe. Rest.